Okay. So this mic works. I can use that.
Yes. Good afternoon, and welcome to the second of our leadership series for 2008. I have a couple of little announcements because if you've been trying to attend all the sessions, initially we did not have a session for April 4th, and that was because I was planning to be at the Final Four watching KU play, but after the other day, I probably still won't be here. I'll probably still be in San Antonio. But we were working on a couple of different things, and Mr. Lanza contacted us, and he's a special agent for the FBI and is doing some really neat presentations that fit into leadership. And we thought it'd be good to have an FBI agent on campus. So there is now a presentation in April, and we're still working on one for the end of May, but it's been fairly tricky. We always appreciate your comments and suggestions for other leadership presentations. Marty Gunyon is already working on next year's series. So, all right, today, this is a presentation. We've had a number of different speakers through the years, but always very popular. And we choose three, very competent and visible folks from the Med Center across different components, and just have them present a little bit about their leadership styles and give you opportunities to ask them about how they deal with various sorts of issues. The key component of this each year is Jim Dugan, who serves as moderator. He's the psychologist, counseling, and educational support services person, meets a lot with students and faculty. But he really likes to do this, and I like to get off stage pretty quickly, too. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Dugan. It's all yours, Jim.
Thanks. I'm going to move this out. Can I do that?
Yeah.
We're trying it out. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Welcome. It's nice for you to be here today, and I appreciate the opportunity Bob gives me each year to facilitate this and get a chance to hear some of our good leaders here talk about their leadership style. Our format is each of our presenters will talk about 10 minutes. They'll each present, and then after the rest of the time, we'll have questions. So our presenters said they love questions. Big questions, little questions, all kinds of questions. So please see if you can, what questions we can have for them. It facilitates the kind of the interaction that we like to have in this meeting. Our first presenter today is Tammy Peterman. Tammy has what I say true Jayhawk blood running through her veins. She has a bachelor's and master's degree in nursing from the University of Kansas here at the Medical Center. She's worked here at KU in various positions. She's made a number of internal and external presentations, had a number of administrative responsibilities. Some include educational specialist, organizational development, Vice President of Nursing, and more recently she's been Chief Operating Officer and Chief Nursing Officer. I was looking at her resume, and one of the things that strikes me very impressively, many things, but during her work with the nurses here and her team, they achieved a 58% reduction in the nursing turnover with a cost savings of about $5 million. So, plus the added value and benefits to patient care, morale among staff. So, obviously a strong leader, and we're very pleased to have Tammy Peterman here today, so please welcome her.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone wearing red. Now, there may be a few of you that aren't wearing red, and you might not have known that it's kind of Go Red Day today. So we brought some pins for you all, and they're right out there in case you want to have red on for the rest of the day. So hopefully you can find one of those out on the table. They asked us to do this. They said, we've got this presentation on achieving leadership, and they selected the three of us to spend a few minutes talking to you about our style or some of our leadership characteristics. And then they said, and you have 10 minutes. And I thought, oh my gosh. Well, my team knows that that might be the biggest challenge of all for me, is to do this in about 10 minutes, but I will try really hard to do that. And I know that I have a timekeeper right here that Bob's going to remind me when I get close. So I will do some speed talking if necessary. I think there are a number of different leadership styles out there that work for people, and I think you can take bits and pieces of a lot of different people to really form your own leadership style. And I thought one of the things that might be helpful is just to share kind of maybe that top 10 list of what I really have felt has been effective as I've learned and grown into a leader over the last number of years. One is, and these are not in order of importance, one is really to be consistent. I think that you have to be consistent for a number of different reasons. One is you've got to make sure that your team knows what you're telling them and that you don't change your story every time you turn around. And if you tried to do that, I just think you've got a confused team and you can't achieve the results you're hoping to achieve because no one's headed in the same direction. So I think you have to be consistent about the message and also with people. And I also think another one of those key characteristics is to be accountable and to assume that accountability. One of the key phrases that I say a lot, and my team knows this pretty well, is own everything that's yours and a little bit more, because you don't know what's out there that you're supposed to be owning. And that's, when I say own everything that's yours a little bit more, it's really about accountability. It's not about possessions. It's about don't take somebody else's stuff, but it's really about being accountable. And I think when you go to the table and you've got a lot of issues and everybody owns a little piece of it, you're going to fix those issues pretty quickly, as opposed to doing this across the table and no one really wanting to assume that ownership. The other piece of being accountable, I think, is being accountable in our hospital to our patients, to our families. And one example of this, I think, is being transparent. If there's an adverse event that occurs in our hospital, those don't happen very often, and I'm grateful for that. But if that would ever happen, what we do is we go straight to that patient and family, and we're transparent with them. And the first words out of our mouth will be, "We're sorry." And we may not know the details of what happened with that patient or family, and we'll tell them we don't know the details, but we also will tell them we'll figure out what happened and we'll get back to them. Because things occur in hospitals. We're all human, and sometimes things occur that we don't want to happen. But the important part is that we own that and we tell the patient and the family that. And that's a whole lot more difficult to do than it is to say, because those patients may be angry, they may be upset, but in the long run, they will appreciate the fact that we were open and honest with them. Another one of those characteristics is to be visible and be available to people, because I don't think you could really be the leader if you're not out there with them all the time. And I think you just have to stay connected to the people who are doing what you want them to do in the organization. I don't know how I could be an effective leader if I didn't stay close to the staff and I didn't stay close to what they were doing in our hospital. So I think you really have to stay close to them, and you have to listen to them, the patients, the staff, the families, physicians, everybody. Another one of those characteristics is really to keep an eye on the future. And what I mean by that is the fact that we need to always look for those aspiring new managers and new leaders in our profession and in healthcare. And I do that all the time. I call those rising stars. And who are they? Because they're all over the place. We have the advantage of working in a place that really attracts great people. And so you always want to keep your eye on what's that next person out there. You got to keep them challenged too. So when you find those rising stars, help them and develop them and give them opportunities. Give groups of them opportunities, because you want to keep them in your place and keep them happy and keep them challenged. Kind of going hand in hand with that, be a mentor and find a mentor. And sometimes that can be through a formal mechanism, and sometimes it can be really informal. I received an email from a nursing student who's about to graduate in May, and she said, I kind of followed her through her nursing academic life, and she said, "Can I come visit with you, because I'm trying to make some career decisions?" And I thought, absolutely. And then she even used the mentor word in there, and I thought, oh gosh, that's just been fun for me. But really what sometimes people need is just that person who's been through the process and has had a number of experiences to provide someone else with those opportunities. Another one of those concepts is to maintain your own competence, because you can't lead what you don't know. So make sure you stay current with what's going on in your world and in your industry and with your team. I don't have to maintain clinical competencies, I don't think. Now, the staff nurses might think that at some point it'd be fine if I worked a Saturday night in the ICU, but I don't think I could do that today. I hope they don't, because they probably wouldn't necessarily want me. But the fact is, you have to be competent in your role and in your position and in your job in order to truly be effective. Another one of those is to focus on the team. My team also knows this pretty well. It's really not about the individual, and it's not about the success of one, because I don't believe success comes to just one. I think it comes as a result of the team that's worked together. And sometimes that team is this entire campus. Sometimes this team might be nursing, it might be a department or a unit. But it's really about making sure that the recognition goes to the group, not to the individual. And one of the things that my folks know pretty well is that I don't like the I word when we're taking recognition. It's really about us, and we are the ones who did it. And so I'll always change that I to we pretty quickly. Now, if it's ownership, I expect individual ownership as well. But I think when it comes to recognition, it really has to be about our group. Probably hand in hand with that is humility is a characteristic that I value greatly, and that's what I'm trying to build our team around, which is a group of people that are pretty humble, very successful, but humble in the work that they do, because I think that you can't, and that just goes back to making sure it's not about the individual. I think we all have to be flexible and creative and innovative today. What worked yesterday may work today. It may not, but it definitely won't work in the future. And so we really have to be pretty creative and listen to outside industry and let them give us some ideas about how we might do things differently or better. I just think that we have to look through a pretty wide lens in our world today and make sure it's pretty clear and free from bias, because I think there are so many opportunities for us to be even more creative than what we are to be more successful in the future. I think you have to confront issues when they occur. You can't be afraid of conflict, because I think when you're afraid of conflict, that will build, and all of a sudden you realize that you don't have the relationship with the people that you need to if you haven't addressed conflict. Really, there's a whole strategy on how you do that, and I can't get that accomplished in 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep going. I think you have to share your story, like we're doing today, but it's also about sharing the story of the organization. Every other Monday in leadership, we share stories about our patients and about our hospital, and that's for a number of reasons. One is to give recognition to people and let them know that what they do absolutely does make a difference every single day, but it's also to make sure that they know these are the things that are valued. When you share a story about a patient situation, they'll see, oh, that is absolutely the way we want to be as an organization. And the last one is probably one of the hardest for me. It's just keeping that balance in life, making sure that you give everything you can to work, but you also have to keep a balance with the rest of your life. And one of the examples that I try and maintain is every Friday morning, I stay home and fix breakfast for my teenage daughter and all of her friends. And I fix chocolate chip pancakes, and I've done chocolate chip pancakes every Friday morning for years. And sometimes I had 2 daughters at home, and now I only have 1. And I would probably invite the whole class over for chocolate chip pancakes, because it's one of those things that really re-energizes me. So that's not a full balance, but it's a little bit. Bottom line is, it's really about passion and people and achieving outcomes. And I think you have to have fun when you do it. And in closing, because I know I don't have much time here, I just want to tell you that I think leadership can take all different shapes and sizes. Typically, we think it's about title or experience. And yesterday, I was at Jim McLean's memorial service, and I think, and maybe a number of you were as well, and I witnessed an example of his life that really had nothing to do with experience or title, but it really had to do with character. And it was a pretty awesome service, because a number of people got to share their story about Jim, and he was a remarkable leader at a very young age that had an impact on a lot of people in this organization. And as I left, I walked out to my car last night, and I was thinking about that service. And I was kind of thinking about this presentation. And I thought to myself, I said, I wonder, and I hope that each of us as leaders would be proud and pleased if that was us that was being talked about, that we would be pleased with the result of that, and that we would be pleased with what people would say, because that's what it really comes down to. Do we make an impact on people's lives, and did we do it with the character by which we want to do it? Thanks.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. Our next presenter is Dr. Steve Stites. Dr. Stites is a graduate of his medical degrees from the University of Missouri in Columbia. He completed his residency. Moving right along. He completed his residency at the University of Rochester and then a 3-year fellowship in pulmonary medicine and critical care here at the University of Kansas. He's presented at national meetings, numerous national meetings and international meetings. He's the author of a number of book chapters and articles. He's been active as a researcher and as well as an active practitioner here and held various administrative positions, director of the residency program in internal medicine, recently named the director of department chair in internal medicine. And I don't know, like many of you, we probably haven't had the opportunity to work with Dr. Stites on a regular basis. But when we do, I think I'm struck, and maybe you're struck too, by his energy and his enthusiasm and what I call kind of pushing the envelope in some of the things that he's doing. So I'm really looking forward to hearing his program today and his presentation on leadership. Dr. Stites.
Pardon me? You're way too kind. I told Jim he was way too kind. It's not that good. Well, first of all, thanks, everybody, and it's difficult to follow Tammy. I've worked with Tammy Peterman for a long time, and I will tell you it's a great example of leadership, and so thank you. You know, one of the things I stop and think about is, okay, so when these guys asked us to do this, I thought, man, there's just a lot of good leaders on this campus, and how do you go up and say something meaningful in 10 minutes that it's going to stick with folks? And because there's so many great, you can write entire book chapters and entire books about leadership. And well, instead of trying to tell you what it is to just be a great leader, I thought what I'm going to tell you about is a story. And then I think from the story you can sort of extract the core values. Because I think leadership is about your core value. You know, when you go around in life, there are a lot of different kinds of great leaders. I mean, there are presidents who have been great leaders and some who haven't been great leaders. There have been, I didn't mean a current political reference. I'm not trying to just think, okay, well, maybe I did a little bit. There are great coaches, and then there are some teams that don't have great coaches. I'm a little worried about the Tigers right now in basketball. But ultimately, I think you have to look at what your organization is about and define what are your core values as a leader. Because you see what, if you try and do something that's not part of your core value, that really comes across as fake to people. And if it comes across as fake, you've lost your credibility, right? You've lost your credibility, and if you don't have credibility as a leader, you're done. So define to yourself, what are your core values? And then decide, that those core values fit what I'm trying to do for that organization? Because if they don't, you're not going to be successful. So what are your core values? Do they fit? And then decide how you're going to make that mission happen. So I'm going to go back a few years. In about 1999 or 2000, something like that, Tom DeBose was our former chair of internal medicine, set me down and said, Steve, I want to change the direction of the residency program. I think you're the guy to do it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, Dr. DeBose, that's a big job. I'm not so sure I want to do that. But the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to. The reason I wanted to do it was because one of the greatest mentors and leaders I ever had was my program director in Rochester, New York, Rudy Napadano. And I really had great admiration for him because whenever he talked, he always talked from his heart, and he was always honest, and he had unapproachable integrity. I thought, he made such a difference in everyone's lives. So I knew at that point, I said, I want to try this. I want to change. At that point, our residency program was small. We had sort of a mixture of different quality levels. I thought, what I want to do? I want to build a program. I want to do what Rudy Napadano did, because you can leave a pretty lasting mark on a community if you affect the healthcare delivery by affecting the teaching of physicians. So what is important to me in building a program? What are the core values of building a residency program that I can reflect? And I found there were 5 of those values. What's the first thing you want to teach a resident? What's the first thing they ought to be here to do? Save the patient. We start every conference, every recruitment talk, everything we do. And what do I say? When I had my first meeting with the department chair, the first thing I said was, what is our core mission? Our number one job. It's always the same thing. Save the patient. Everything flows from that. If you do a great job of educating, you've helped the patient. If you do a great job of researching, you've helped the patient. If you're there in the middle of the night because your patient's sick, who have you helped? It's always about the same thing. If you do that, you've met your first core value. Second one, do the right thing. That's incredibly important because sometimes that's really hard. We sit around the residency program every Wednesday. We meet for 2 hours. Imagine how these leadership teams all do the same thing. It's kind of funny. We meet for 2 hours between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and we talk about the training program. We go through every rotation, every hospital, anybody who's having trouble. And it's kind of like, it's a little repetitious, right? Why do we always have to have these meetings? Because you know what? We're about doing the right thing. And when we come down to hard decisions, let's say we have a resident who's having a little academic difficulty. We're not sure if we're going to keep them. It's going to be a big tragedy to their lives if we take them out because maybe they're not really quite cutting the mustard. We try and baby them through. Well, we do if we think we can help them. But if we can't, what do? They may have to stop and have debt. They may have a lot of debt if they can't finish their training as a physician. But ultimately, what do? You do the right thing. Sometimes that's a really hard thing to do. You try to do the right thing. And I think people recognize that. They get that. And then they begin to trust you and they recognize that you have integrity. Rudy Napadano, the man had unapproachable integrity because he was always doing the right thing. And as like a leader, you have to do that. Number 3, do no harm. We tell our residents this all the time. You don't know what you don't know. Got to figure out what those boundaries are. If you get into a position with a patient that you're not comfortable, you got to get help because you cannot hurt someone. Education is, that's obviously why we're here trying to teach residents. But in that teaching, we can't put a patient at risk. And that's sort of a hard thing to do because sometimes you want residents to have enough authority, enough responsibility to go out and save the patient, to learn what it's like, to make those decisions. But you can't put them into a position where being out there by themselves causes harm to someone because that's not the right thing to do. So do no harm. To save the patient, you have to do the right thing. You have to do no harm, and you have to build bridges, not silos. I think when you build an organization, it's very tempting to say, it's about me. It's about my organization. But you know, it doesn't really work that way, because eventually, all roads come back around. I remember when my wife is one of the most important, probably the most important person in my life, was an practicing OBGYN doctor. She's a great doctor, far better doctor than I would ever be. And she was out in practice, and one of her senior partners was discussing his philosophy about employees and about other physicians. They'd had a physician lead the practice, and so are we going to be really angry about that? He said, no. Don't ever burn a bridge. You never know when you're going to come back. In 1997, I almost left KU Hospital. Okay, you do this place. I came really close. I came close because we didn't have much of a heart program. I couldn't get my patients cared for in lung medicine with good surgeons, and it was a difficult time here. It was really difficult. Hospital Authority was born, had some great leadership, and it skyrocketed. Our residency program began turning around in 99 and 2000. And you know what? In part, it turned around because the hospital turned around. I can't teach residents. I don't have good faculty. Or we don't have enough patients. But if we had started saying, oh, you're bad, or somebody said, you're bad, I said, it doesn't work like that. You have to recognize that when you're going to work in a place like this, you have to be able to build bridges. It doesn't mean you always agree, but it means you're always going to try, and you're going to try and find the best. And if you do that, you're going to find a lot of colleagues out there who are going to help you along the way. So build bridges, not a silo. Number 5, those who laugh last. I tell my residents this all the time. You get your work done, you do a good job, and we're going to have some fun together. Because if it's a fun environment you create, people are going to be part of your mission. I walk into the ICU. I still like to staff up in the ICU. Or I hope they keep me around doing it for a little longer. And I walk up in the morning, and I know if everybody's done their job by looking at one thing. You know what it is? It's the potassium level. Because I know if the potassium levels are right on the patients, that everything else is in order. Because potassium is tough to manage in the ICU. It's either going too high or trying to make people take off volume. It's going too low. We can't get it right. I walk up in that ICU. If the potassiums are off, I'm worried. Because it means other things are off and somebody didn't pay attention. They didn't keep their eyes on rule number 1, save the patient. Well, I walk in there and I know the potassiums are right. Everything's right. And that means rounds are going to be fun. Because they're on target, and I can teach a lot, and I can make fun of them, and I can tease people, and I can have fun with them, and I can make learning fun. Those who laugh, laugh. Those 5 rules. I think those are the core values upon which we built our residency program. And I think it's been successful, and we've got great people. I've got great people who I work with who make those things happen on a daily basis. And at the end of the day, when you have the vision, and you have your core values defined, and you make sure that your core values match the job that you're trying to do so you can be successful at it, you can make a difference. You can be like Rudy Nabadano and build a great training program in internal medicine that influences a community for generations to come. And that's what we've done. And it's funny, as I sat there and listened to Tammy's 10 things, I was sitting there, I wrote them all down, or 10 or 11. And they're 10, they're 10. I wrote them down, they're 10. I thought, you know what, if you look at her 10 and you look at my 5, they're the same thing. Because they're about what are your core values. And I think when you're a leader, having core values and making sure the people around you understand and believe in those core values will make you successful. Thanks.
Very nice. Thank you, Steve. Our third presenter today is Don Branson. Don has a bachelor's and a master's in business administration from Wichita State University. He's had over 30 years of management experience in human resources, strategic planning, partnership, and business development. He's been he joined KU in 1990. Is that it, Don? And he's been the HR director at CUPE. He's been involved in CUPE's. He was the first administrator for the HIPAA program for CUPE. He's presently working in OB/GYN with Dr. Weiner. And Don's one of those people that if you've been around KU for a while, you might not know him, but you heard about him. You heard good things about him and his role in leadership and what he's done here for the organization. So I'm really pleased to have Don as our presenter today. So Don Branson, please.
Everybody hear me okay? Well, first of all, when they asked me to do this, I wondered why, and especially with so many leaders on this campus, and then I found out who the other co-presenters were going to be, and I really questioned why me. But I do want to share a few things with you, and it's tough to follow their comments because I couldn't agree more with all the things they said. And I also believe that there is no one model or template for what can be called good, effective leadership. There just isn't just one model that is supreme to every other approach. But the one I try to emphasize for myself anyway is trying to create conditions in which people can motivate themselves and achieve their level of and desires for their livelihood and their work effort. Leadership is not about cheerleading, although at times that can play a role and can be a part of it. I'm going to mainly talk also about leadership at more what I call the mid-level or work unit. Obviously, I'm not the chief operating officer of the hospital. I'm not a chairman of the largest department. So I'm going to kind of talk about leadership at what I call the team or work unit. In the hospital, that would be a patient care unit maybe, or in a research, it could be a lab. And those are all positions that require leadership. And the one big point I think leadership at those levels have to understand and embrace is the mission of the overall organization and the mission for that work team. If the mission is not well defined for that work team, then you as the leader should define it. Now, I would recommend you also present it to your leader and make sure that you're on the same page with what that mission for your work team is. Human beings, in my opinion, don't produce superior work effort and results for a paycheck and health care benefits. Those help, but they don't make people push themselves and drive themselves for superior results. They do extra work, and they do provide extra efforts when they become compassionately involved and connected to a purpose or mission. And I think we're fortunate here at KU because we have such an outstanding overall mission that is unique in many, many respects. Compared to banking or car dealerships or retail stores or what have you. It's nothing against the people that are involved in that, but I know from my previous experience, much of it outside academics and outside healthcare, this is a very, very unique overall mission that we have here. And it excites me to be able to be part of it. I don't think it was an accident that TIA Craft, for those of you maybe are familiar, they're a big financial firm that caters to universities and academia for retirement plans. And they've been the most successful of that over about 80 years. And they coined a marketing phrase a year or so ago, and I don't have the exact verbiage, but it was something, tagline in their marketing efforts that said, "For those involved in providing the greater good." And what they recognized was that their core clients who are involved in academics, healthcare and non-academics, were driven or part of academics for reasons that once again went beyond just a paycheck and healthcare benefits. I think they struck a chord. They knew what a core value was for their client base. Now, in any large organization such as ours, the mission can shift at times. Some things can be a little de-emphasized, and some other things can be re-emphasized or increased in emphasis. And that's the natural evolution. The mission doesn't necessarily stay static. It does shift. And that shifting can come about due to leadership changes, or it can also shift due to outside influences. And I think we have seen and are seeing and experiencing that here at KU, where community leaders, whoever they are, have come to a conclusion that if this metropolitan area is ever going to have a seat at the life science arena, that the University of Kansas research component needs to be nourished, invigorated, grown, and developed. To the point, I think, someday that we would love to see the research component get the national recognition that the hospital has recently received by being one of the top 5 academic hospitals in the country. Getting the kind of national awareness that our family medicine department has received by being one of the best programs to train and educate family doctors. And I'm not saying that the researchers today and in the past haven't achieved great success, because clearly they have. But I think obviously the research side for us is the emphasis that is going to be more pronounced than it has in the past. And for those of us that have been primarily involved in patient care side of this equation, that can be a little unsettling, a little concerning. And so you could find yourself at times, here or elsewhere, where the mission maybe is becoming a little concerning to you because it's shifted. And you may have some questions about it. And that's okay to an extent. But I would encourage you to be an effective leader. You're going to have to trust your leaders, and you're going to have to embrace that mission. But if you still have your doubts, then I would give you this one piece of advice. Make sure that your work team never, never, never knows it. You cannot lead by running down your organization. I don't think it can be done. I'm going to close with some real quick, what I call nuts and bolts. Activities or actions I think leaders are participating in to some degree or another. The word visionary comes to mind many times for leadership, and I would say clearly at the higher levels, see nursing officer, the chief operating officer, chairman, they need to have a big dose of visionary for their organizations. At the work team level, I think less visionary, but more of some of the following activities and actions. Problem solving. Now, as a leader at a work team, a problem solver, not really, although you may solve a few problems, but what you really need to do is create a culture or climate where the team members can solve the problems. You will have problems all the time. What you want is a culture and climate where the team can solve those problems quickly, effectively, and efficiently. You're also a planner because you're planning the operational tasks and activities that result in supporting the mission of your work team or the overall mission. And those plans don't have to all be multi-year, 5-year plans. They can be plans for next week also. And they all support the mission. You're a team builder, obviously, because you're the one that decides who's on the team and who's not on the team. And who's not on the team isn't because you've discharged them. Maybe you're developing people and you realize that what they want and what they're good at, it would be good to get them over on someone else's team for their own development and growth. And so you've got to, as a leader, I think, recognize that your team is not your personal property. It's just individuals that are on your team right now, and your role is to make sure that they can move on if they need to other things to help their own development and to help the organization if they hopefully stay within the broader umbrella of KU. You're also a communicator, of course, because you're communicating the plans, you're communicating the mission, you're communicating the daily activities that need to be done. Most of that's verbal. Sure, email helps, but I would encourage effective leadership to not over-rely on the email. And obviously, when you're communicating, try not to have the only venue or location to be your cubicle or your office. Get out there where the team is at. That's where the real good communication will take place. And finally, I think a leader has a good coaching. That's also what's about. You're basically, a coaching culture puts a premium on people. That's what it's about. It's coaching other people to play the game, coaching other people to do the work. The coach doesn't do the work. You coach others to do it. The final comment I would make, it ties in with that, I think, is that people do join organizations and companies, but they leave due to leadership.
Very nice, thank you. We've had 3 very interesting presentations on leadership, so now it's your turn. Questions? Here you go.
Don, you left us with a thought-provoking last statement. I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that.
That turned on? I'm sorry, Don. Here you go.
Well, clearly, I don't think as a leader you need to be concerned that you have a person leave your team. What you want over a period of time, though, is to reflect back on the people that left the team, why they left, and most importantly, are the ones that are leaving the high achievers, the ones with the great output? Because if that's happening, then you need to sit back and reflect about your leadership style. You know, if the ones that are leaving were mismatches by and large, then, you know, that's the evolution of the team that you want. Also, take a departure of any team member as an opportunity to really improve the team. Your goal in replacing that team member should be viewed as this is my opportunity to improve the team.
Tammy, Steve, do you want to say something about that?
I couldn't agree more. Exit interviews are a really important part of what you do, because if you don't find out what people are going to say when they leave and try and get people to be honest, then you're going to miss an opportunity to get some really good insight back, I think. So. I don't know yet, Chad. I knew what I was doing as a program director, I think. It depends, you know, I think you really have to trust the people that are working around you, right? I mean, you can't do every single thing, because otherwise you'll never sleep and you'll never see your family. That's not a good thing. So you have to have people around you who you trust and value, who are going to give you that and provide kind of unfettered feedback. And that's the same thing I would have done as a program director, too.
You know, I think that good leaders typically kind of have their pulse on what's going on in their departments. And most of the time, I think those leaders know if there's someone who's not so happy. And if those really high performers aren't happy, then it's our opportunity before they tell us they're going to leave to try and put something in place to keep them here. Now, sometimes people are going to leave for reasons that we cannot control. But if there are reasons that we can, that's our job to, I think, identify those things ahead of time.
What other questions? Please, can you shout?
Yes, I certainly can. Dr. Stites, your fourth thing.
I did, kind of a reference to, you know, all people who build their own little castle or silo, and they stay in it forever, and they don't go out and help others and things. And I think the only way to really make yourself successful is make sure you've guaranteed the success of those around you. And I think that's what helps you make a difference in people's lives. And so, yeah, build bridges, not silos. As a Department of Medicine, I don't want people to think, well, you're only about the Department of Medicine. Well, yeah, we are going to be a lot about the Department of Medicine. But we're only successful if everybody around us is successful. The basic science folks doing research we collaborate with, if they're successful. The hospital's successful in taking great care of patients. And if education is successful, the students and the residents, then our department is successful. It's not successful if we simply do something right by ourselves.
Other comments? Okay. Further questions? What other questions do we have? Another? Okay, please. Go ahead.
I'll quit if other people don't have. I'm interested for all three of you how you identify those core values and how they match to your core values and people you're recruiting.
You know, for me, I've spent a lot of time because back at William Jewell College a long time ago, that was the whole part of their whole academic thing was what are your core values, what are your core beliefs? And then when I was in Rochester, that was something that was really emphasized. And then, so it's just one of those things that was kind of, I was brought up with. And so then I think you look at organizations and you read about organizations. One of the things you have to do is that the organizations that begin to fail are the ones that lost the way around their core mission and their core values. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think look at somebody, you have to look at what they've done, right? If somebody says, I can collaborate, then you call back and you find out about where they're coming from and nobody else knows about them, or the people around them don't say the best things. Well, maybe maybe they can collaborate, but maybe their collaboration wasn't very good. And so I think, you're sort of a detective and an internist, whether they're a pediatrician or internal medicine, we're all about being detectives. So hopefully we can find those signs that will help us know if somebody has those core values.
I guess I'm next down the line. I agree with what Steve said. I also think what you brought up, Chet, was really important because I think that part of our culture is who we hire, and we have to hire really well. I tell the hospital team, hire the very best and brightest, but don't stop there. It's really about hiring the best and brightest because you've got to have these really bright people in our place, but it's really about the fit in our organization because sometimes the person with a 4.4 GPA may not be the one who's the best fit for us because they have to understand here's the culture of this organization and we're all about the patient and it's not about individuals, it's about teams. It's kind of making sure that all of the things that we've kind of talked about here today that they can see that in those candidates because you can change the culture of an organization very quickly if you bring too many people in that don't have the same set of core values that Steve just mentioned. And we, particularly in nursing, we hire about 100 new grads every year. And you think that 100 new grads can't change the culture, it will change it anyway. We can hire the very best, and they can be the best fit for our hospital, but you bring 100 people in, and you can start to see a little bit of a change. So you have to make sure, and you do that through the interview process. When I hire when I interview for a higher level position, my folks know this, they have to keep coming back for interviews because I'm looking for consistency, because I want to know that what they told me on Monday is what they're going to tell me on Friday at 5, and I kind of look for that in people.
I try to find out happiness and unhappiness. First of all, I try to never explain anything about the job or the position or the organization at an interview. Because if you explain what you're looking for and everything, then they're inclined to just feed that back to you. And somewhere in the interview, I will try to start finding out and ask them about previous positions. What did you enjoy about that? What was, reflecting back, what did you enjoy? What did you like? And then I reverse it. What did you not like? What activities you may have done but you really didn't enjoy? And pretty soon, if you'll start to get what they're happy about, what they enjoy, and things that they don't enjoy, either in activities or culture. And I weave in there that the environment, the work environment too, and kind of the culture aspect.
I have a question. We're all leaders at some point in our organization and system. How do we, in addition to these meetings and hearing, how do we hone those? How do we build those? What ideas do you give your residents and nursing staff to? What do you guys do with your groups to kind of push that?
I think self-awareness has to come into play somewhere, because I don't think you can truly grow if you don't know what your areas of strength and maybe opportunities are. So I think you really, as a leader, I think we all have to know that. And we have opportunities to get that, sometimes formal and sometimes informal. And if you don't have as many formal opportunities, I think you need to seek out the informal ways, because you can develop relationships within the organization that people can give you feedback. And so that's one thing. I think the other is it's really up to us to know what's going on out in the world, not just inside our organization. We have 1,000 resources, and we're grateful for all of those. But we also need to get ourselves outside the walls of the organization and learn about other leadership and management techniques and things that have worked in other places. And so I think it's both self-reflection as well as learning from other people. There's evidence in leadership, just like there is evidence in medicine, and we need to look at it.
I couldn't agree more about that self-awareness, man. It's all about, you can only get so much out of these classes. After that, it's watch and learn. I think one of our finest leaders in the department, especially as a physician, is Alan Fleming. Now, when Alan Fleming came back here, he ruffled a lot of feathers. Alan Fleming grew up with people who were old school. I mean, the best way to teach a resident was to scream at him. And so when he first came, it was a little hard for Alan. But interestingly, what he did is he modified his teaching behavior a little, and suddenly the guy who was the most feared, most demanding, hardest working attending we have is now the most sought after and appraised attending we have. And so you can do this. You can watch and learn at any age. And you know what that means for our residents? It means now they're watching Alan Fleming and they're learning from him. And they would say, I want to be like Alan. And you know what? Man, if I'm a patient, I want my doctor to be like Alan. So I think that's a good thing. Watch and learn.
Okay, thanks.
It is. Let him tell the story to you about when he first came back. Oh, he and I went around about something one time. But now, I'll tell you what, I don't know if he'll receive it, but the highest teaching award for the university I nominated him for. And he deserves it. He is a great teacher.
Would you like to
I really
please?
Can't add much to those comments.
Okay.
It's about observation and picking. But I would also say you've got to kind of be true to yourself. I mean, watching other and picking styles that will be comfortable for you. Because I think if you get outside your skin, so to speak, it just won't come off well.
But the way I phrase that is just be a sponge. Because if you sit and watch, you sponge up all this stuff that people around you show, and you got to figure out how to adapt it, whether you fit it or not for your personality. That's a different thing. But man, you can really sponge a lot if you watch.
Agree.
Good. Questions?
Yeah, our first.
I'm impressed that Bob Klein has been quiet for this entire topic. Bob Klein is one of the most revolutionary people around here. And he's a great leader. So I'm impressed with how quiet you've been. That's a great mark of leadership. I'm not very good at it.
I was listening. I was a sponge. Our speaker last month, Paul Casella, talked a lot about how part of it is really, at least starting out, is acting, in that you watch other people, and it may not be. I'm an introvert. It's hard for me to get out in front of a group, but I do it all the time. I've done it for 30 years. I did that by watching people who sometimes were nervous and incorporated that into their presentation, felt the butterflies, and would say, that's a good thing. You're on edge. You want to perform well. You want a great lecture. You're going to have a better lecture because you care about it. And just pulling those pieces, and part of it is, I think, acting, at least at first. Watching someone else, probably like Dr. Fleming, watching some people who were getting better teaching reviews and better comments from residents and weren't as good at medicine as he was, and watching and trying to learn from that and taking on something that is really not part of you at first, and then it becomes part of your being. So I liked what Paul Casella said, that, I'm telling you to act. At least start that way, and you'll see the benefits of it. You'll see how you change, and then you can change other people and members of the team. That was no question, but a comment.
Comments on that?
I have one comment. I would just say, and I have to make this a sixth rule, that, some people have the leadership and they say, I'm successful when I've done this or I've done that. What Tammy said earlier is absolutely right. You mark your success by how successful the people around you have been. That is the mark. You want to find a great leader? Go see how successful the people around them are. Somebody who is successful by themselves and everybody else around them isn't successful, well, that's not a great leader, right? Because you haven't really developed that in anyone else. I think it's not about you; it's about everyone else. So, yeah.
Final question? Comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Please, can you shout loud?
Yes.
That's really a 2-day seminar, and we can start that later. No,
You know what? I'll make one. So, a year and a half ago, Larry Smith came here. He's a great physician. He's from, I think he's from New Jersey. And he had a thing, professionalism across the generations. How do you measure it, and how is it different between the baby boomers? I'm going to guess we're all baby boomers. Tammy may not be. She may be younger than I am. Or the Generation XY or the millennial generation or whatever. It's very interesting how professionalism was measured differently. Because in the baby boomers, it was like, what have I done? I have to make sure that the patients are getting the best care. Because when they grew up, they spun the CBC themselves, they looked at the gram stain or the sputum themselves, they did everything by themselves. But today's generation looks at professionalism differently. It was about, how do I function best as a member of a team? And I actually think they got it right. So, I think you do have to approach generations very differently. You just have to be a little bit aware of that when you go in and know the characteristics a bit of that generation. But at the end of the day, it should not change your core values. You just have to get people to buy into your core values for different generations.
The only other thing I'd add to that is just recognize that at every stage of life, someone's needs and desires are changing and different. A 20-year-old has completely different perspectives of what's important to them in their life at that time than someone who's in their late 50s. And so you just need to understand how that influence outside their life is going to affect them in their life at work.
Final question? Listen, thank you all for your questions and for coming. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't have much to add. It's just that I think that's one of the greatest challenges of leaders today, because I do think that we're doing it across a number of generations. And as long as Steve said, at the end of the day, it's always about whatever that core value is, we can all kind of come together on that topic.
Thank you for coming, your questions, and our presenters for an interesting conversation.